Thank you guys for coming to see my presentation on waiting room times in the emergency room. And this is going live. We did have our first meeting last week and we did get some general ideas and what we plan on doing for our emergency room. The focus I'm looking at here currently in our emergency room, we have about a 3 to 5 hour wait time for our patients and there's a lot of delay in care, a lot of downtime with these patients, and a lot of frustration with not only the staff, the doctors, but with the patients as well. So we're trying to decrease this time significantly. The problems are lab works takes a long time to get back. We also have a long time for CAT scans, x-rays. Patients are the nurse is having a high ratio of patients. Normally we have about 4 to 5, which can be tough if you have a critical patient. The patients that aren't so sick get delayed with their care, and the other issue that lies is getting a room upstairs, them becoming clean, the nurse being ready to take them, and then the doctor. The doctor sometimes can also put a hold on the process. So there are a few things we are currently doing now because we know as a whole that this is an issue. So currently now, my nurse manager has a sheet that we fill out every 30 minutes. We basically look and see where our patient's at in their process, and we write down our initials, and then we let the patient know what we're waiting for. And this can get redundant, so we do, like for myself, like I don't ever go every 30 minutes, but I do go past and like make sure my patients are okay. And then also I go in those 30 minutes and say, ask the doctor, what are we doing for this patient? Trying to get them on. I'm really like trying to be a positive influence on this because I do feel that it can get a very long process, and that builds up our waiting room times. And being a triage nurse as well, I've had to have people sit out in the waiting room for 2 hours, and your guilt. You're just like, you're nervous. You're just always thinking, what can happen to that patient while sitting out there? So I think it's important to get these patients back. Our staff is great. It's important right now that we have float nurses, and we have a process nurse that basically gets our patients, she's like called a process flow nurse, that she gets our patients discharged. She's also on those doctors saying, what are we doing with these patients? And then the nurse manager and the doctor have 2 hour rounds, so they go through each patient and say, what are we waiting on for this patient? And the newest thing that we're doing, and this is kind of like what we did with our first meeting, this was one of the things that we found that would be effective, was we have a physician assistant. We normally, physician assistant or nurse practitioner, we have 2 a day. We have one in our quick care and then one in the main. So we have them on a busy day go out to triage and basically order the blood work that needs to be done on the specific patients, and then when they get back, all they're waiting for is either a CAT scan, x-ray, whatever, or just seeing the physician, looking at that blood work, get some fluids over in. So we're just trying to get that process, and this was a new thing, so it's only happened a few times, and it's worked so far. So we brought that to our nurse manager's attention, and we plan to keep having these meetings weekly. So we see what we can find that works. We're getting those opinions from the staff and everything. Okay, so before I get into the process, like I was kind of getting ahead of myself because this is a very exciting project for me, is I'm going to get into some evidence-based practice. There's about 5 articles I've reviewed. I'm going to just go over some key points on them. This one's from author Armar, and his look was at Medicare patients. He felt that a lot of Medicare patients at this point in time are having a hard time getting into a doctor's appointment due to insurances and due to the coverage that Medicare provides. So we're seeing a lot of Medicare patients come into the emergency room for regular doctor appointments for things that they could see at their regular doctor, but unfortunately cannot get a doctor's appointment. So he does say they're trying to put a higher copayment on Medicare patients for non-urgent matters to help reduce that. And then he made some great points. I'm just going to read off some statistics because I think this is crazy. And it's true, because working in the emergency room, you do see a lot of unnecessary things that can be treated in the doctor's office. So his points were, out of 6.5 million ER visits, 29% of patients required immediate attention. So those patients there are the ones that need to be there. 24 did not require immediate attention, and 41 could have handled their issues in the primary care setting. So that's an issue in itself, and that's a bigger issue that I'm not getting into with my project, but is something that needs to be addressed. It is a big issue with emergency rooms at this current time. We have another author, McGarley, that says between 1990 and 2000, emergencies decreased by 27% and the number of ER visits increased by 44%. So not only are we seeing more visits, we're seeing decrease in ERs. And he goes into the study of basically burnout, and that's going back to the nurse-patient ratio. So that's what his big focus on, which I think was a great article. And he also looked and said how we can get this flow faster was keeping the staff at its highest during its busiest hours, and we do that through our ER as well. Of course, there are better days than others. And then, same thing with this study. They look at the process of the ER, how they can make it faster, like getting the patient registered and triage at the same time. Do they need to be back? Can they wait in the emergency room? So again, this is the normal process of the ER, but they look into some information with that. And then Wilkes does the same. And the same thing was about the gatekeeper, which giving different roles into the unit. So the charge nurse is the gatekeeper, and they basically are getting those patients admitted early, or seeing if the patients need to be admitted right when they get there, so then they can notify the nurse managers of the floor so they are staffed. Lastly, we have Wilkes, and he also looked at the decreasing in ER and then looked at the uninsured, which has been the biggest issue within the last decade with healthcare, is that the insurance policies and with the decreases in ERs and everything. So my process. Currently now, I'm using a descriptive study, also using a little bit of qualitative study with my research. I currently have a process going on with each week. I am having one person from every group of staff members. For instance, I have one physician, I have myself and another nurse, I have a paramedic, I have a case manager, I have a nursing aide, and a nurse manager that comes in. She says she'll come in as much as she can, but we do actually, at our end of our meetings, I email her a copy of everything that we've gone over to see how we can better our ER wait times. The second point of view I want to get from, the other person I have in our group is a few nurses from the medical floors. They are going to be a big help because I can only help so much in the ER. That's half the problem with the focus and with the time. The other part is getting them up to the floor. So what are their points of views to help getting our patients up faster? I secondly have a questionnaire and a survey that I'm sending out, or a survey that I'm sending out to patients that waited the longest in our ER. Currently, we already do this with our patients. We give everyone a survey about how their stay was when they get admitted. So I wanted to look at the patients that spent the most time in the ER and make sure that they are getting the surveys and saying, what could have we done differently? So we're getting not only their perspective, I'm getting their perspective, I'm bringing it to the meetings. Sometimes it's realistic, sometimes it's not, but we are open to anyone's opinion and discussion for how we can improve our ER. So we meet once a week. This has just started live. So last week we went over the problems I discussed earlier, which was the lab and radiology reports and nurse to patient ratio. Our first thing that we have gone live right now, not really gone live, we've done it a few times, and we're trying to get this implemented into our ER, is that we have that physician assistant, and we know our busy days. We know Mondays are busy, we know Fridays are busy, and then there's an unexpected Tuesday, Wednesday. It's unexpected in the ER, but we're gonna try on our busiest days, which are Mondays and Fridays, to get a physician assistant to mainly be in the triage area, and that we are going to have her, after their triage, they're going to come over to them if they need blood work. And I have done this with the physician assistant. I'll sit there. She says, we'll need some blood work. We'll need a urine pregnancy test, and we're going to need a urine. And I'm going to put them in for a CAT scan once they get back. So now we are looking at the one problem of the lab works. The lab takes a long time. Sometimes the blood gets hemolyzed. It could take up to hours, an hour, hour and a half to get the blood work back. So if we're getting that process started, then when the patients come back, we are at least getting one step out of the process. This has significantly been doing it well. From the feedback I've gotten through the nurses, the 2 days that we did this, they felt that the patients were coming back, and we would keep an IV line in them if they felt, of course, if they felt reliable that they weren't going to leave. We made sure all our patients were aware that if they were going to leave, that they would have to come back. But of course, if we felt the patient was kind of like, could have left, we would just straight stick them for some blood. So we got some good positive feedback from the nurses that day. And then when I brought it back to the meeting, we're getting some positive feedback also from all those groups of people, because it's important to look at the physician, how he feels about it, how the paramedics feel about it, how the nurses aides feel about it, how the nurses feel about it. So, and then most importantly, we're going to get those questionnaires back from our patients. So that was our first thing, and we have some other great ideas that we're trying to implement, but this is our first one that we're implementing at this current point, and we're going to continue to do these meetings weekly, and hopefully implement these processes into our ER, and hopefully we will see a decrease in time, and my nurse manager is being very supportive with this and is helping me and looking at, we'll be looking once we implement more ideas and get more ideas, because this is the beginning of our process. She's going to see if our emergency wait time is decreasing by the things that we are doing. So it's a very small study. It's a very objective, so we're using descriptive study and qualitative study. And the reason why I'm using these two studies, mostly I'm using descriptive, but I like descriptive and qualitative studies do go a lot together, is because I'm using, my first goal is to use observation, and that is the biggest part of this project, is observation, surveys, questionnaires, and we're using staff, which is great for both these studies. And I'm very proud to say that this first 2 meetings, about week and a half of this project has been doing really well, and I hope to see some progress. Any questions? Everyone's very quiet. Liz, no questions this week?